are back on RNN, and we are with our host, Senator Sheldon Whitehouse. Good to see you again. Thanks for being with us.
It's my pleasure. Thank you for being here.
Senator, one of the themes I see around the agenda and the material is potentially talking about a move, but as we maybe ebb a little bit from a federal support of environmental protection around recognition of climate change to potentially more state, local, and regional. Is that true? And if so, why?
Well, there is a lot that can be done locally and regionally. And depending on what your locality is, what you need to do can vary quite a lot. If you're a western state and your biggest fear is catastrophic wildfires, you have a very different set of problems than if you're Rhode Island and you're worried about losing much of your coastline to sea level rise. So doing things locally is part of tailoring responses to the specific threats that those localities will experience. And the other piece, of course, is that we now have an administration that is more or less in the pocket of the fossil fuel industry, that is putting really wacky climate deniers into positions of grave responsibility. And so I think people at the state level, at the municipal level, in our major corporations are all looking around and thinking, wow, we've been able to count on the federal government for a long time, but maybe not so much now. We need to step things up. And I think that's happening as well.
I'm going to shift to Dr. Weber and Ken in just a second, but as you think about renewables, energy efficiency, how does that relate directly, indirectly? Because today we're talking about energy, environment, and the oceans. How do those two things relate to protection and preservation of the oceans?
Well, the oceans are absorbing enormous amounts of the heat that is generated by the greenhouse effect. More than 90% of the heat has been absorbed by the oceans. We're worried about a 2-degree centigrade shift. We'd be over 30 degrees centigrade if it weren't for the ocean. So that's a big deal. They also acidify. You bubble carbon dioxide through seawater and it changes the pH. It makes it more acidic. And so we have a shellfish industry that's very concerned about making sure that the little shellfish can grow their little shells in acidified water. So there's a very direct connection between carbon pollution and our oceans. Renewable energy is the alternative, and it's starting to win the contest of price and prove itself on reliability. It's not just a question of you only get solar power when the sun shines and you only get wind when the wind blows. There's actually enough out there that you can spread it out. And in Iowa, the major grid service provider treats wind as base load 24/7.
That's monumental. Karen?
Oh, I was thinking, to what extent are you looking at bringing funding to innovative businesses, small startups, research at URI? Are you working on any of those kinds of?
In any way we can, we're trying to find a whole variety of projects that can either win grants, say through the Department of Energy. We had Brown University students win a grant for capturing a design to capture current energy in the water by just flying something up and down and using that to power a piston. So we're looking for that, and we're also looking for ways, creative ways to address particularly the sea level rise threat along our shores. How do you best deal with that?
Ken?
Senator, recently the General Services Administration adopted SITES. It's a program that was developed by the Green Building Council. It stands for the Sustainable Sites Initiative. And what it does is it deals with regenerative landscapes to provide better ecosystem services. Now my question is this: with the flattening, that's my term, of EPA by the current administration, how much of a reach do you think that the White House and the cabinet directors would have on, say, pushing back on sites? Or similar programs?
Yeah, it remains to be seen. In theory, once a program has been authorized and funded by Congress, the president has sworn an oath of office to faithfully execute those laws. He doesn't just get to say, well, I don't like that, so I'm not going to do it. Congress has spoken, Congress has the authority, and they've funded the program. However, there is a concerted effort to sabotage a lot of programs, and I think at some point we're going to need to push a lot harder on the administration about whether they're actually following the law and whether the president is keeping his oath of office to faithfully execute those laws.
Senator, I know it's filling up. You're going to open things up with some comments and remarks. We're in our 8th year here.
Yeah.
Today, interesting group, a collection of fantastic leaders, both local and national, again, coming together around issues of climate change, but it's a complex issue, and it gets into the economy and the environment, it gets into government policy, it gets into a lot of things.
Yeah.
What are the primary messages? What do you think we'll take away today that will help us change our lives and be part of the solution going forward?
I think that if I had to pick two primary messages, one would be that it is way past any reasonable debate over whether climate change is happening or what is causing it. Way past.
Amen.
And if you look at the oceans, it's crystal clear. The fossil fuel climate deniers aren't even contesting what's happening in the oceans. They just try to ignore it because it's harder to confuse people about it because it's so simple and clear. And the second thing is that notwithstanding this really bad administration, notwithstanding the horrible power in Washington of the fossil fuel industry, there's enormous basis for hope and optimism and confidence because so many different levels of the private sector and the public sector are still pulling together to get the job done, whether it's the We're Still In coalition that the environmental groups have run, whether it's Mayor Bloomberg and all his mayors continuing to work on these issues, or whether it's the simple economics of nowadays a lot of renewables beat out coal and natural gas. If you don't care about climate change and just want what's least expensive, renewables are starting to win in most areas.
If you want a good return on investment, right, efficiency and green, as you said, is winning the day. And for you, where it can be cantankerous at times, obviously, in Washington, here it must be nice. It is a room, as you said, with a mix of NGOs, government leaders, private investors, developers, and it's collaboration. It's coming together.
That's what this day is all about. These are people who care a lot about stewardship of our terrific Rhode Island heritage of beautiful places and bays and all of that. And it's an opportunity for fellowship along with the stewardship, but also for people to get to know each other, to work together, and for new collaborations to emerge.
And to build some confidence and credibility, so when we get back on RNN, we will be focused on the Senator, his opening remarks, and some of the first events taking place, including a wonderful panel that will be looking at climate change and resilience and what's going on here in particular in Rhode Island. Give us a minute. We'll be right back.